be able to house people as they were being processed prior to being deported. And Florida, for whatever reason, had very small number of beds for DHS, and so they asked us to be able to help with that. And so the advent of the facility here at Alligator Alcatraz was, we did not want to see illegal aliens, particularly the ones that were being targeted in these stings that have serious records. We didn't want to be in a situation where they're being released back on the street because there's not sufficient bed space for DHS or bed space in Florida's existing facilities. And so the advent of this was an emergency situation. The reconciliation, they didn't have the funding that they eventually got when they did the reconciliation bill. We wanted to make it so that you would be able to have this be temporary. Hopefully they'd be here as small amount of time as possible, and then you have the runway right back here. Then they can be flied out, presumably to their home countries or staged to be able to make that happen. And it required a lot of logistical know-how, a lot of wherewithal. I think that once the word went down that this was something that DHS wanted to see done, I think it took us, Kevin Guthrie could tell me, I think it took us like less than 2 weeks, 10 days to be able to be ready to go. And that was something that's not easy. So as of now, this facility having this has led to almost 21,000 deportations, and those would be people by and large who would have been released back into society in Florida had this space not been there. Now, who are some of these people? I've got a list of a lot of people here, massive rap sheets. Elias Juarez, sexual battery of minor niece, previously deported and subject to an ICE removal order. Felix Ramon Nieves Mejias from Venezuela in Kissimmee, arrested by Florida Highway Patrol. Interpol red notice for aggravated homicide in Brazil. Suspected Tren de Aragua member identified as national security threat. Kendrick Smillian from the Bahamas, Pompano Beach, picked up by Highway Patrol. Kidnapping, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, drug trafficking. Pablo Gomez from Cuba, FHP, criminal history including second-degree homicide, kidnapping, armed robbery, armed home invasion, burglary, fraud, grand theft. McClenny Desmolet from Haiti, wanted by Brazilian authorities for rape, subject of an Interpol red notice. Orlando Dupiran, Orlando, Florida, picked up by Highway Patrol. 116 felony convictions, including drug distribution, assault with a deadly weapon, organized fraud, and Medicaid fraud. Sosa Ramos, DUI, domestic violence battery, driving offenses. We have Ariel Bueno Valdez, Pensacola, picked up, convicted of sexual battery of 5-year-old child and designated a Florida sexual predator. You have sexual predator from Vietnam. You have armed sexual battery, burglary, child sex offenses from Cristino Linares Rivera. You have folks charged with more than 200 grams of fentanyl trafficking, like Luchin Daly from Jamaica. From El Salvador, you have a fellow wanted on warrants for sexual battery and drug trafficking. Twice deported, MS-13 gang member. On and on it goes. The rap sheet is really incredible about what's come through here in this facility. And how could it be that you'd want to have those people released back onto the street? No, that's not the way we roll. So I have no doubt that when you start talking about 21,000 folks, that is, without question, has made our state safer, and it's made the country safer as well. Now, we've also done more, probably about 30-some thousand overall in terms of detention and staging, where DHS would then pick up for removal from the country, because we also have the deportation depot up in Baker County. So that was probably, I think that's almost 10,000 that have gone through there. and that's also been very effective as well. So we're proud to be able to be in this fight. But at the same time, I said from the beginning that this was a emergency solution that would be temporary, that once DHS had the wherewithal to be able to handle these illegal aliens, particularly the criminal illegal aliens, that they would be able to do so, and we would still help. We'll still do the 287G. We're still going to be participating in that. But in terms of us managing this facility, to the minute that that's no longer needed, then we obviously would break down the facility. And so Alligator Alcatraz fulfilled the role that it was designed to serve. Today it now has 0 detainees. It has helped remove many, many dangerous people from the street and get them out of not only the state of Florida, but the United States of America. The detainees that were here are still in federal custody. The demobilization efforts here at this facility are underway. We stood this up. We surged critical resources. We built critical infrastructure. We were able to manage very complex operations, and we were able to efficiently execute the mission when called upon. There's no question that this mission has made the state of Florida safer. There's no question that releasing some of these folks would have been represented a clear and present danger to the well-being of Floridians up and down the Florida Peninsula. Our efforts to support this important mission of immigration enforcement continues. Our 287G agreements are still in effect. Our Baker County facility is still in operation, and the mission continues. But DHS is in a better footing. DHS has more capacity to be able to handle these folks. And I always said, we're only doing this because it's necessary. The minute that they have the capacity to handle these folks and not release them on the street, we're going to be supporting those efforts. And so we've arrived at that point, and I'm proud of everybody who worked very hard to help keep the state of Florida safe, to stand up for the rule of law and American sovereignty, and ultimately this saved lives. I have no doubt that this saved lives. All right, we're going to hear from Tom Homan, and we're going to hear from Director Coker. Tom?
All right, first of all, I want to thank Governor DeSantis, state of Florida, for the cooperation and partnership. He's right. When the President of the United States, Donald Trump, came in office, he declared a national emergency. Governor DeSantis was on the phone with me within days, understanding the President declared a national emergency. How can I help? We had many discussions, and he did. He stepped up in the time of need, and he continues to step up. Today doesn't end the cooperation. He told you a few minutes ago, his 287G numbers are beyond any other state in the country, by far. Which means what? That means more criminal aliens are off the street in your neighborhoods in the state of Florida, making Florida safer, making this country safer. President Trump came in office. Why did he declare a national emergency? Let's be clear where we were at and why the Governor DeSantis stepped up. Millions of illegal aliens were released in the United States, in my opinion, illegally, by the last administration. They say they were vetted, but then we find out they weren't properly vetted. We don't have access to many criminal databases in other countries. Matter of fact, many of these countries don't have an NCIC. So to say they're properly vetted means they're vetted against our databases, but we didn't have their criminal history in other states. Millions of illegal aliens released on the streets without proper vetting. National security threats. Under Trump 45, we had 14 apprehended on the southern border. Under Joe Biden, over 400. Sex trafficking women and children were sky high. We know we had 2.1 million known gotaways. Why did 2.1 million people pay more to get away? Why didn't they take advantage of the Biden policies? Come in, turn yourself into Border Patrol, get released within 24 hours, get a free airplane to the city of your choice, get a free hotel room, get free medical care, get 3 meals a day, get work authorization within a few months, which is the real reason they came here. Why did 2.1 million people pay more not to take advantage of that giveaway? Because they didn't want to be fingerprinted. They didn't want to be vetted. These are your criminals. These are the people who are trafficking women and children, and these are people from terror-sponsored countries. So President Trump did the right thing, declared a national emergency for the safety and security of this nation. And Governor DeSantis was one of the first governors to step up. Him and Governor Abbott stepped up. Governor Abbott stepped up 4 years in the Biden administration trying to secure the border best he could. He did a damn good job. So that's why there's a national emergency. And where is President Trump's administration is right now? Within 7 to 8 weeks, we got the most secure border in the history of this nation. And the data proves it. The most secure border in the history of this nation was achieved under President Trump. Record numbers of arrests and deportations. Look at the numbers this morning. Over 1 million departures since he's been in the Oval Office. There's no president that's done that. And for those in the media keep saying that, we're not keeping to our promise of, looking for criminals, then you're looking at the wrong data. The data I see every day is 60 to 70% of everybody we arrest is a criminal or pending criminal charges. What does that mean? That means this country is safer every day because of the leadership of President Trump. Now, a lot of people question, well, we should be arresting everybody. Well, we are. But I would rather have 60% criminal than 40% criminal. The targeting of public safety threats and national security threats are the priority of the president, and we're achieving that. Well, let's talk about the difference in the state of Florida and what Governor DeSantis has done here with the 287G program. 50 states in this nation, Governor DeSantis accounts for 40% of all 287G arrests. Let's talk about the partnership that we have with every single sheriff in the state of Florida. What does that mean? That means an illegal alien that's been locked in a jail cell, apparently because he's a public safety threat or a flight risk or some other reason, isn't walking out of that jail back in the streets of Florida. So what does that mean? That means less agents in the neighborhoods looking for that criminal, which means the communities are safer. Let's compare like the state of New York, who just signed legislation that we lost cooperation, we lost all the 287G programs, lost cooperation in the jails. And I'll tell you the same thing I told the governor of New York. If you lock us out of the jails where one agent can't arrest one bad guy in the safety and security of a jail, which is safer for the community, safer for the officer, safer for the alien, that's going to force us into the street to find the bad guy. And when we find them, many times are with others. Others are in the country illegally, but may not be a public safety threat. Well, they're coming too, because we're going to force immigration law. That's what American people wanted when they voted for President Trump. So when you become a sanctuary state and do the complete opposite what the state of Florida does, there's going to be more collateral arrests, there's going to be more agents in your neighborhood, and your community's going to be unsafe. It doesn't make sense to me for any public safety threat illegal alien to be released back into the community to reoffend. We hope more governors follow the lead of Governor DeSantis. President Trump achieved the most secure border in the history of this nation. He has record numbers of arrests and deportations, majority of them criminals, which means this country is safer every day. President Trump's leadership have located 147,000 children that were smuggled under the last administration, they lost track of and weren't even looking for. I'm sick and tired of reading in the media how inhumane the Trump administration is. 147,000 children. And we got many more to look for. There's almost 300,000 children unaccounted for. President Trump made a commitment to the American people. I make that same commitment. We're not going to give up until we find every single one of them. We know that some have already died, some from natural causes, some from violence. We know that some that we found and rescued were victims of sex trafficking. We know that some were in forced labor. It's President Trump and his leadership that are rescuing these children. People say this administration is inhumane. Let me tell you something. Illegal immigration right now is down 97% on the border. What does that mean? That means less women are being sexually assaulted making that journey. That means less children are dying making that journey. That means less fentanyl is getting in the country to kill Americans. That means less National security threats are being led in this country. This border is locked down at the highest level ever. And that is why I say, and I am proud to say, President Trump's the greatest president in my lifetime. And the data proves it. No one's done it better. What President Trump is doing every day is saving thousands of lives by securing that border. And we're going to keep our commitment. Look, Governor DeSantis did a good job, and he's going to continue doing what he's doing to help us make this country safe again. This isn't an end of relationship. This is a continuation. We'll continue to go out, we'll continue to enforce immigration laws. We're going to continue to prioritize public safety threats first, but let me make it clear. If you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. And for those people who say, well, why don't you just arrest criminals? Why do you arrest others that may have been here, 8 or 9 years? If that's the message you want to send to the whole world, enter this country illegally, it's a crime, don't worry about it. Get order removed by an immigration judge, you don't have to leave, don't worry about it. As long as you don't commit another crime, no one's looking for you. If that's the message you want to send to the whole world, we're never going to fix this problem. Which means the most vulnerable people in the world will make that dangerous journey, give their life savings to the cartels to come to this country at great risk and great peril. Secure borders is the most humane thing you can do. And that's why we're going to keep enforcing the law. That's why we're going to keep having a record number of arrests and deportations. This is the American people voted for, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And I thank Governor DeSantis for his leadership and his partnership with the Trump administration. Him, Governor Abbott, a lot of the governors in these red states, they're leading by example. They care about their communities. They believe law enforcement should work with law enforcement. I look forward to our continued partnership and the success of this administration with the help of the great governors in this country.
Go ahead. Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you, Governor DeSantis. Thank you, Czar Homan. Pleasure to be here today. My name is Anthony Coker. I'm the Director of Immigration Enforcement for the great state of Florida. Honored to be here today to share the stage with some of the greatest men I've ever had the privilege to work with. The dedication of Governor DeSantis and Czar Homan to the safety and security of our country and our state is bar none. In the past 7.5 years, Governor DeSantis has transformed the state of Florida to be a conservative stronghold focused on bringing back the American dream for Florida families and ensuring the safety, security, and affordability continue to be integral focus of his administration. Our Czar Tom Homan is the definition of a man who has selflessly served this country for the past 30 years. I've had the pleasure of hearing Tom speak a couple times, and I understand that if it wasn't for his love of and commitment to our country and his trust and belief in the leadership of President Donald Trump, he would be happily retired. So to Governor DeSantis, Czar Homan, and to everyone else here to support FDLE Commissioner Mark Glass, Florida Division of Mercy Management Director Kevin Guthrie, Director Kerner, ICE, our ICE partners, our Border Patrol partners. This is an all-team effort, and we appreciate everyone's assistance. Today we are here to highlight Florida's leadership in supporting the Immigration and Customs Enforcement public safety mission through our partnership with Department of Homeland Security. Under Governor DeSantis' leadership, Florida has taken decisive action to assist in the enforcement of immigration laws, including the expansion of the 287G agreements that strengthen the cooperation between state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies. These partnerships have provided law enforcement with additional tools to identify and arrest individuals who are in the country unlawfully and who have been arrested for serious criminal offenses. Through these efforts, dangerous offenders, who Governor DeSantis spoke about today, that did pose a serious threat to communities have been identified and removed from our streets, then again making Florida a safer place to live, work, and raise a family. Florida has also stepped up to provide additional detention capacity through the Alligator Alcatraz facility, supporting federal immigration operations during periods of increased enforcement activity. Facilities like this play an important role by ensuring that individuals awaiting immigration proceedings can be securely and humanely housed while going through removal proceedings. As Governor DeSantis has said, Alligator Alcatraz today has 0 detainees, which means mission success for Florida. None of this would have been possible without the strong leadership and a commitment to enforcing the law. President Donald Trump made border security and immigration enforcement a national priority, and Governor DeSantis ensured that Florida would be the strongest state partner in those efforts. Together, they demonstrated that when federal and state governments work in cooperation and coordination, they can enhance public safety, strengthen the rule of law, and deliver results for the American people. Florida's message is simple. We will continue to support policies that prioritize the safety of our communities, uphold the law, and protect the citizens of our state. We are proud of the work that has been accomplished and will remain committed to doing our part to keep Florida safe. Thank you, and God bless.
All right. Well, we're thankful for everyone that worked hard over this. The numbers that was achieved is there's no other state that was able to do that, and I know it's not easy, and there was a lot of great effort on it. So we're going to continue the partnership. We understand the mission continues. We're still doing the Baker County facility, and we're also in discussions about how else we could be helpful, maybe using some of our existing corrections footprint, and who knows what'll end up happening on all that. But this made a difference. No doubt it saved lives, and it's helping to fulfill the mission. So okay, we'll have some questions. Yes, ma'am. We have gotten a tranche. We will get it. I mean, I was there with Tom and the president, and the president said, get Florida their money. And Tom's going to make sure. Part of it, I think, is just bureaucracy. We actually just got a FEMA reimbursement either this week or last. Not for this. We had already gotten a tranche for this. But we got a FEMA reimbursement for COVID. In 2026, we got a FEMA reimbursement. So, it's the reality is how they do that. But the president came, he committed to support the effort with that, and he's been very supportive of everything. So that'll happen. They obviously have more money now than they did 9 months ago. I know they have new leadership at the agency, which I think the current secretary is interested in fulfilling these obligations, not just to Florida, but to a variety of states. So you will see that. And that will be reimbursed. But here's the deal. 21,000 people, with some of the rap sheets that I said, had this facility not existed, there would not have been a place to put these people. While they were waiting deportation, they would have been put back on the street. That would have harmed Floridians. I've met angel moms. I've met a lot of angel moms, and the number of them that I've met have lost a loved one at the hands of an illegal alien that had already been deported and came back, or was out pending some type of charges, or should have been deported, is a very, very high percentage of them. And you can't put a price tag on that. So, yes, we did it. The agreement was reimbursed. We will get reimbursed. But, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to not want to keep our people safe. That would not be a decision that I would ever make. We've got to do what it takes to keep people safe. And there's no question that people are safer as a result of that. We prevented preventable crimes. And that's all the people have always been asking is just enforce the law. And I don't want to be in a situation where someone gets killed because somebody who was here shouldn't have even been in the country. That's a failure of government. And President Trump had a big mess to deal with, and they've made great progress, but it can't be done without state support. So we're stepping up and we're getting the job done. They've gotten some of it. There's always money coming back and forth. There's a lot more to go, and they'll get it. When we do hurricanes, if we had so we started this facility in the summer of last year, I think July or August. If we had a hurricane then, we would have done things subject to FEMA reimbursement. The chance of us getting all the FEMA reimbursement would be zero for a hurricane. I mean, it's just the way they operate. But I know that Tom is going to help grease the skids on some of that. Like, the good thing about Florida is we've got a big budget surplus. We've got a maxed out rainy day fund. I'm going to sign a budget here in the next few days that's going to represent the 4th straight year of reducing state spending. How many other states can say that you're actually reducing spending? And that's not just adjusted for inflation. That's nominal dollars that are going down. So we've got a lot of resources to work with. We obviously have fund for disaster response, but even just the general surplus revenues in both general revenue trust fund is strong, and it has been very strong throughout pretty much my entire tenure, as governor, certainly in the last 5 or 6 years. So we're in great spot, and we will get reimbursed, but it's not like if we don't get reimbursed everything next week that somehow the state is going to suffer fiscally. We won't. I mean, we have going what we need, and so it'll happen in due time. So on the second part, I would say that possibility would be negligible. This was an emergency situation. DHS did not have resources. The funding they got last summer had not passed yet. And they were in a situation where they could not keep these people. They didn't know what to do with them. They didn't have the space. So we did this partially because we wanted access to airport so that once they were here, they were going. Nobody escaped from Alligator Alcatraz. I mean, this is a secure facility. So they were able to be flown out of here, and the flights were regular and the flights were routine, and they got into a good thing. So, but it served its purpose for the time. You know, now that they have resources, it is the federal government's responsibility to be able to process these folks, right? We stepped up because there was a gap. But my hope is that they'll be able to handle that. Now, we still have the Baker facility. That's a little bit different than this one. And there could be other existing facilities we have. Maybe we have some space in one of our correctional institutes where they could come in. It won't be done through FEMA reimbursements because they have money now, so it'll be handled a little bit different in that direction. But I don't think you would see us doing this again. This was temporary. This was an emergency measure. And we thought that it would be 6 to 12 months, and that's what ended up happening. Yeah.
Hey, look, let's not, you're talking about the reimbursements. Let's remember, let's not forget, the Democrats shut down DHS for months, which slowed the progress in everything. So let's keep that in mind. I mean, Secretary Mark Wayne Mullins doing a great job. He's moving things along. But let's remember what happened. The Democrats shut down the Department of Homeland Security for months. So things fell behind, but we're back on mark.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you're talking about a matter of days to weeks, probably 7 to 14 days, most likely. Yeah, so it's quick. Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. They are maintaining custody of these folks. They have an ability to stage them and process them. They did not have that ability when this facility was opened last summer. So that's a good thing that they have better resources. It's a good thing that they've had to move the ball forward in that regard. I think it was just you're obviously moving people here. And we never, the way it worked is when FHP, FDLE, any of our agencies or locals or DHS on their own has apprehended people here illegally, the decision to send them here was the DHS's decision. So if DHS sent 1,000 yesterday, we obviously would have processed that and handled it. But the fact that they're not needing to send them here is that. So I think it's a combination of it makes a good point to kind of make the transition, given that we're in a situation where you could have to do evacuations, and we planned for that. I remember when we opened it, people said, "What if there's a?" We planned for that. Kevin planned for that. We had multiple contingency plans in place. It was not ideal, given that, but the reality is almost any place you put something in Florida, there could be a hurricane risk. So it's not like you can just say that means you can't do it. So that was always something that was a concern. It was something that we mitigated. It's something that we would have been able to respond to had we had a storm last year. But look, if they have the ability to handle these folks, I think it makes a lot of sense. I haven't heard anybody in the administration tell us their plan is to start releasing criminal aliens. That's not their policy, and that's not what they're going to do. What happens to it? I mean, this has been doing training missions and training flights, and they'll be continuing to do that. I mean, this was an existing facility. When we announced this, it was some people were trying to say that we were building, some new facility in the middle of the Everglades. No, this has been here. This does training flights. It's not the most busy airport in the state of Florida by any stretch, but it has been used for that. It's continued to be used for that, and it will continue to be used for that, in the future if that's the desire that people have. I don't know. I mean, I think that, Kevin can tell you about kind of how the sovereignty is going to work out. I will say, because we've done a lot of course, on Everglades restoration. I mean, I've done billions and billions of dollars. We built the C-43 reservoir, C-44. We did stormwater treatment for the EAA reservoir. We've now assumed federal projects with the southern reservoir, and we're doing those with federal funding. And then the federal government's working on the main EAA reservoir. And it's been a massive success story, probably the most significant environmental success that the state of Florida has ever had. We did things that people didn't think would be possible to do, particularly on this timeline. And that southern reservoir now, EAA reservoir, is scheduled to be completed in 2019. That's 5 years earlier than the projection under the Biden administration. And part of that was because of the president, his support. Part of it is Florida stepping up to handle these projects. So we've really left no stone unturned about how can we move the ball forward on Everglades restoration. So in the process of this, over the last 6 or 7 years, there were discussions about if this strip, if you just took everything out, would that meaningfully aid Everglades restoration? And I think the view was that it really wouldn't make a huge impact. It would be costly. So I'm not sure that that's something certainly our administration is going to push. It was fine the way it was. We had to spend money on making sure that this area was self-contained. And so they'll say, oh, they spent money on sanitation. How do you spend? Well, it's because it was all self-contained. So they're hauling waste every day. They were not allowing runoff into the local environment. They did a really good job of keeping this contained so that it didn't have that impact on the surrounding environment, especially given what we've done to support Everglades restoration. And when this was proposed as a possible short-term solution, that was clearly one of my questions. I was like, well, what's that going to mean? And they were saying, no, here's how we do, here's how we contain. And they did. It did cost money to do that. But to me, I think that was an appropriate use of resources. I mean, I would much rather contain it, have to pay to do that, than to see runoff going in different areas. And so that'll be, there'll be other people than me that'll ultimately make decisions on that. But I can tell you, if I thought somehow uprooting all this concrete would be the key to really good Everglades restoration, I would support that. That's not really been, I think, the view of a lot of people that have looked at it.
I can't hear you, sir.
The TPS decision that the U.S. Supreme Court, just 6-3, about they can allow, so the president has the constitutional authority to make it temporary and not permanent.
It's the right call. I've been doing this since 1984. TPS has never been temporary. That's why the whole statute exists. Temporarily give people protection while the country's in turmoil or after they suffer a hurricane. But the problem is no administration have had the guts to actually follow that statute. President Trump has the guts to follow the law. So temporary means temporary. When the condition of that country gets better, they need to go home. There are millions of people standing in line want to be a part of the greatest nation on earth. And that goes back to my early point. People say, why do you arrest them if they're not criminals under 10 years? Because they cheated the system. They may have been in 10 years, so let's remember, when you enter the country illegally, it's a crime. And they're doing that, putting themselves in front of the line while millions of people are taking their tests, doing their background investigation, paying their fees to be part of the greatest nation on earth. So temporary means temporary, and I'm grateful for that decision. That's going to be a question for ICE. I mean, this just happened, so I'm sure they're developing plans along with Secretary Mullen how to implement that. But again, a great decision. Temporary should mean temporary. That's the way the law is written. I'm glad that the Supreme Court recognized that.
Yeah, and I think Tom talked about the mandate to fix this problem after the 4 years of Biden. And no, look, the reality is I know we're very polarized politically, but after that election, there were a lot of people on the Democrat side that acknowledged you can't just have an open border, and that was not the right policy, and it did hurt politically because voters did not want to see that, what we were seeing. So it was a major issue that needed to be tackled. So the president came in. I know Tom was very instrumental in a series of executive orders. There were policy directives issued to DHS about how to conduct both border operations and interior enforcement. And what you have is the response to that is a lot of lawfare, where activist groups will go sue in front of a liberal judge. The liberal judge will say, like they just ruled, the liberal judge just ruled, you can't enforce immigration law, in or around courthouses, which just makes no sense. I mean, that is not what the law says, certainly not what the Constitution commands, but I'm issuing a nationwide injunction. You can't do this. So those court cases and those judicial rulings are not ultimately going to be validated by the U.S. Supreme Court, as we saw with today's TPS ruling, but it's to throw sand in the gears of the immigration enforcement to make it so that it's much more difficult to just do what the law commands us to do. It's a very curious element of American policy and law that the law on the books with regards to legal and illegal immigration is much different than what actually happens in this society, particularly over the last 20, 30 years with respect to legal and illegal immigration. And president's trying to say, okay, the law on the books is really what governs. It's not to develop things contrary to law that have no legal sanction. The problem is, you have a lot of judges that are trying to, create some tripwires there and make it more difficult. The bottom line is a district judge sitting in San Francisco can't enjoin enforcement across the entire country. And I know the U.S. Supreme Court has dialed back that supposed authority, but they still find ways to try to stymie the efforts. So you have this case that goes to the Supreme Court that was released today, 6-3, temporary protective status. Something happens in a country, maybe a natural disaster, people could come, get temporary protective status, things get stabilized, they go back. I mean, that's the intent of it, and yet it's turned into, once you get TPS, that's just indefinite. It's kind of an end run around the normal immigration system. And first of all, I don't think that's good policy. Second of all, that's not what the actual law says. But third of all, if you have something that's temporary, president can grant temporary status, and then you're saying the president can't stop the temporary, put a date on it to make sure it's temporary? I mean, it'd be crazy to have ruled any other way. And I know 3 of the liberal judges would have ruled the other way. But that was a no-brainer in terms of immigration policy and immigration enforcement. And then you're going to see this case on the courthouses. That's going to end up going up to the Supreme Court, and it's going to have a similar result. There's nothing in the law or Constitution that says that's somehow like a no-go zone for immigration enforcement. It's the most sensible place to do that in many respects. And the judge said, well, if you enforce the law there, then they won't attend their immigration hearings. And it's just like, what? I mean, what? First of all, it's not the law. So why are you doing that? So I think the 6-3 decision today was correct as a matter of law. I think it's the right policy as well. And I also think you're going to see more of these cases that are going to end up going to the Supreme Court. A lot of these folks, the very partisan judges, I mean, they're basically surmising if they can just slow things down, you're going to have 4 years with President Trump in office. If they can just drag feet, get to January 2029, and then they get somebody that's more akin to their policies, then the floodgates will open back again. And I think that's the game that's being played here, and it's not the way the Constitution was designed, and it's not the way courts are supposed to operate, but they continue to do it, and they continue to overstep their authority. Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.